First of all, thank you for inviting me to do this. As far as booze and me goes, it's pretty much a before and after situation. I drank from the time I was a kid. I don't really feel like had much alcoholic tendency till I was 30, and I quit when I was 50. Basically, I'm 64 now. I wanted to comment on what I'm going to call the 1250 stupid rule. And that is that I had 2,500 hangovers in my life. As a rule, I generally avoid making the same mistake twice. So I call it the 1250 stupid rule because I was 1,250 times as stupid as I want to be. So since I quit drinking, a lot of things have gone pretty well, just on very basic things. I'm in the midst of the most successful romance of my life that's been going on for well over a decade. I have a pretty neat career as a musician. And I haven't had one of those hangovers since I quit drinking. Not one, ever. Zero. I had zero of those hangovers. So I guess another one is I have kind of an unusual situation in that I have three kids and amidst two kind of deadbeat exes. So I raised all three of my kids by myself without child support and such. But this is what I wrote down. I was given the enormous privilege of raising three children as an unsupported single parent. And in my view, a privilege like that is a gift directly from God. And while it is not lost on me that I made a serious mistake in raising those first two children as a drunk, I'm still okay with that notion. And I try to remind myself of that mistake as often as I can so that I never forget that I made it. And I remain thrilled that my youngest child never recalls seeing me drunk. I also find great mystical beauty in the fact that I can live as peacefully with the mistakes as I do now. The mistake was so huge that I can only phrase it like this: I pissed all over a gift from God. And steadfastly refusing to take a drink day after day has turned that crime into grace. It's a fucking miracle, as they say somewhere. So I wrote down 8 little things that were all real pertinent to me in my recovery, or are still pertinent, some of them. And I'm going to start with the heavy one first. Most alcoholics that I know are not violent and not wanting to be mean, and they do not want to hurt people. In fact, like most folks, they want to not hurt people. But for most of us, when we drink, we are hurting people right now. We're going to hurt people right now. There's no maybe about it in most cases. I will wager that many of you know people who would rather get punched in the mouth than find out that you had had another drink. Ergo, when you have that first drink, you are doing big harm to those people right now. My point here is that it's not okay for you to drink. It's not morally okay for almost all the same reasons that you don't punch anybody in the mouth. I sort of think you can double up every part of this if there are children involved, your children involved. Even if your children are grown, they're looking for you as their parents. And what children never need from their parents is to be harmed by them. So that's the first thing. The rest of them are not as heavy. Don't think about the rest of your life. Don't say, I'm never going to have another drink. Don't say it. Don't practice it. Don't think about it. Just don't. It's counterproductive, and I don't really have time to explain why here. I got that piece of advice very early in my career, and I swear by it. I do not think about, say, or consider that I'm not going to have another drink for the rest of my life. In AA in general, like in any bureaucracy, any large organization, there are going to be things that you disagree with. And so my third thing is, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because this is a good program. in any good program, you'll find things that you disagree with. I really dislike the fact that they say an all-powerful God, because it seems in direct logical conflict to a God of my choosing, because maybe I'm going to choose a God who isn't all-powerful, or that I don't know that about him, which is the case, by the way. My fourth idea is to do a lot more service work than you're planning to do or that you're doing now. I know this perhaps goes against typical AA dogma, but I think there's pretty much as much sobriety value in serving up toast at the soup kitchen as there is in going to a lot of meetings or having a sponsee. The general contradiction of our world is that our selfishness versus knowing what we ought to do, an enormous part of the importance in doing the service work is the selflessness. So where it goes against dogma is, I don't think it's terribly important that you work with alcoholics. It's terribly important that you work with the underprivileged in any direction, or that you work with anyone for any reason. This sort of relates to page 552, which some of you are going to know as the place where you can say a prayer for 2 weeks to get rid of your resentments. But in my little mind, that's the second coolest thing on page 522. Because the other thing that's on page 522 is a statement that says a man can't be free until he wants to do what he ought to do. And that's a really guiding light for me. I'm constantly trying to find things that I want to do that I also ought to do. And when I decide that I ought to do something, I work really hard on wanting to do it. And I have found that I can literally change how I think. It's a variation on fake it till you make it, but it's a really important one. It's been super important to me in my recovery because it has facilitated my ability to do more service work, a lot more service work that I think I would have done by toughing it out. So to me, selflessness, when you combine it with clarity that comes from no hangovers, et cetera, is a real peanut butter and jelly perfect combination. It is synergistic or logarithmic or whatever word you want to use. I took a lot of acid, so the word that I like best for it is magic. When I combine a clear head with a selflessness accomplishment, that's when my sobriety feels the most secure. Number 7, I face a chronic shortage of alcoholics to share my experience, strength, and hope with. If you know somebody, please have them call me if you think it would be appropriate. I could use more calls, not less. I don't know how good I am at it. And the last one is something that my good friend Eric may have heard from me for a long time. And I haven't spoken to him much during this wonderful long period of sobriety. But Eric, let me ask you, wasn't it pretty fucking hard to imagine feeling as good as you do right now 2 years ago?